A writer in Germany has penned a feminist version of the classic tale Snow White, and the adaptation has a surprise twist. Well, the new edition follows a pattern of classic tales being given a modern flavour. In a new version of Aladdin, Princess Jasmine becomes the Sultan. In a remake of the 1989 classic Little Mermaid, a black actress plays the lead role. OK, let's discuss this with some guests. I'm joined on the line now by Reese, women's rights advocate, and Karen Turk, TV and radio host. Welcome to you both, ladies. To you first, Karen, does it make sense to remake old classics in order to reflect diversity, feminism, etc.?
This is political correctness gone mad. I'm sad for little girls everywhere that it's no longer okay to be a housewife and a princess. You know, on the one hand, we want to tell little girls that you can be anything you want to be, unless it means being in a traditional relationship, maybe being a housewife, wanting to be a princess, then it's not okay. You know, I'm all for equal rights and I'm all for feminism, but this is just wrong. There's no reason that we should take away fantasy and fairy tales, and this story does just that. This German father has rewrote this thing in a way where it just slaps reality in the face of children. Let children be children. Let there be fantasy. Let there be play. Let there be fairy tales and princesses and princes and horses and unicorns. And let's bring back childhood. We're actually taking away the innocence of childhood when we do this, and I think it's wrong.
Reese, what do you think about those comments? Is this killing the dream of young girls to be princesses? Is it killing fantasy in childhood?
Absolutely not. I think we've done young ladies a disservice for many, many years by promising them this fairy tale and pushing it into their head as little girls, so that when they grow up, they're expecting to meet this guy who's ready to take them on as their wife and marry them and pay the bills and be the head of the household. And for a lot of women, the statistics say that that's actually no longer a reality, and it's unlikely for many women, millennial women specifically, because of just the economy being what it is. And so if it's difficult for women to actually find husbands who are financially suitable, then let's stop with the fantasy. There's no need to continue telling this story. Now, here's the thing about the story. This version has been retold several times. It was actually a German story that was told by the Grimm brothers back in the 1800s and then taken over by Walt Disney in 1930. And so we're adapting this story, and what we're currently doing is we're giving it a bit of an update. Why are we updating it? Because times have changed. So Karen, it sounds good to allow children to live in this fantasy world, but we've got to give them some truth so that they can begin to grow into skill sets and people who can actually function in the real world.
That's an interesting point Reese makes, Karen. We don't say things the way we used to. We treat people differently to the way we used to. Some things just aren't acceptable anymore. Don't we have to move with the times?
You know, I think there's enough reality slapping us in the face every day, and I think there's enough reality for children. I mean, I think we're all very aware that women can be whoever they want to be, and that we all have, you know, options in life. And there is nothing wrong with reinforcing to girls that, you know, they're able to be anything that they want to be. And, you know, just forcing down their throat that the only way that you can have validity is to have a career, and that being a housewife is no longer okay. I don't know that that's necessarily the right thing. And I am all for women's rights, and certainly, you know, I've taught my daughters to grow up and be, you know, self-sufficient, empowered young women. But if one of my daughters said, you know what, hey, I have a guy who just swept me off my feet and he's going to take care of me and I just want to stay home and be a housewife and have children, I would see nothing wrong with that. And I think in some ways we've erased the gender roles. We're actually changing things to the point where, you know, we're taking away from men the opportunity to really be men and take a powerful role in society. And I've said before that I am for traditional values and traditional roles when it makes sense. But, you know, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And yes, we have to teach people that the economy has changed and we need to have an open dialogue. But taking the 7 dwarfs and making them women and then having Snow White travel around the world, you know, with the prince and they're not romantically involved. I mean, this is just changing the entire story. And, you know, there's a place in childhood for fairy tales. And there's a place for fantasy and there's a place for Santa Claus. It sounds wonderful to me, and I mean, we'd all want to be a princess. I mean, I'm sure, Reese, you'd agree, you know, if you could find a guy on a white horse to just take you away and sweep you off your feet, that would be a good fantasy. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's nice to read the story, and why take that away from little girls?
I think having a travel buddy sounds more realistic, and frankly, someone to go have a pina colada with is more my style anyway.
Reese, I just want to pick up on what...
I do like the pina colada idea. There we can agree.
I just want to pick up on what Karen said. Reese, I know plenty of women who do enjoy the old traditional role of the woman in terms of they want to stay at home and look after the home, and they don't want to work and they want to be taken care of and they do want to be kind of swept off their feet. Can we still have a place for people like that, or does everybody have to adapt now to, you know, the modern Western approach of equality and everybody works and everyone has the same role?
You know, I love the concept of gender roles. I love the concept of being a stay-at-home mom. I love the concept of a wife being the neck that turns the head of, you know, the household and basically is the power center for every decision that's made. But can we talk about reality for a little bit? There's the concept called capitalism that sort of pushes those ideals, those fancy ideals, out of reality. And so, you know, when you add that to the fact that some of these young men that are being raised are simply mama's boys and they're not really able or willing to go out into the world and earn a living and take care of a household on their own, when you add issues like that, when you realize that the cost of living has skyrocketed and tripled, and, you know, there's things like student loan debt and, you know, the economy being what it is, when you add all of that together, the reality for so many women, unfortunately, is that we won't get to have that fanciful stay-at-home fairy tale story. It sounds good, and many of us would love to have it, but let's prepare some of these young ladies for reality so that we don't push them into a cold, hard world where they have to fend for themselves and there is no one there to save them on a white horse.
It's an interesting point. Karen, are we setting some young girls up for a fall because they're going to be thinking, OK, I'm just going to wait for Mr. Right to come along. I don't have to worry too much about my career and, you know, focusing on my personal progress because I'm looking for someone to save me.
I mean, I think we've been fighting for equal rights in America, you know, since the 60s. And, you know, we've become very empowered women. But I think we're actually creating mama's boys with a lot of this PC culture. I think that's a big contributor to the problem that we're having. I'm all for capitalism. I love capitalism. But I also love the idea of gender roles, the same as Reese does. And I'm glad that that's something that we can agree on, because I think a lot of this PC culture and a lot of this sort of blurring of the lines has really taken away from men in our society and has turned these men into mama's boys, where they don't feel like they have to be the provider anymore. They don't need to feel like the prince who's going to sweep in on the white horse and take the woman away. And we've actually kind of emasculated them. And I'm sad for the men of America these days and the men internationally. I mean, we're talking about this as an international PC story right now. And I think we are emasculizing men as time goes on with these changes to our PC culture. And I do believe we need to empower women, but I don't think we need to emasculate men in the process. And I think we should let the dwarfs be dwarfs and they should be males.
Reese, in the how can I put this, the view of balance so that everybody's happy. Why not just come up with new fairy tales? Instead of rewriting old ones and almost erasing history, just come up with new stories that better reflect the modern world.
So like I mentioned earlier, the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and actually many of the fairy tales that were adapted by Walt Disney in the early 1930s had actually been retold by the Grimm brothers in the 1800s. And actually the story of Snow White stems from a story that was told back in India in the 1500s of a queen who had a mirror and a talking parrot. So here's the thing. The story keeps updating. And you know what I like the most about the most recent version of the story? Not about whether or not the dwarves are male or female or international and they represent all these different characteristics. What I love the most is that instead of the prince kissing her and Snow White waking up and now everything is beautiful and they ride off into the sunset and get married, he actually is a klutz. He's trying to carry her body in this not casket, but this glass coffin, and he trips. He's a klutz, and so he haphazardly, bumps into her, and she coughs up the apple, and suddenly she's able to breathe again. Sometimes the truth of the matter is that things are a lot clumsier. Relationships with men, and they're a lot clumsier than we would like them to be, all on a horse and coming in and sweeping in. And so it's okay if we paint this story with a little more reality, so that and actually the Grimm's Brothers story actually has that rendition as well from the 1820s. It has the rendition where they bump her coffin and she coughs up the apple. So here's the truth of the matter. Men are just a little more clumsy than we'd like to admit, and we're all a little more human. And so rather than getting into this fanciful tale, let's just add some elements that allow us to bring it to the future and allow our girls a chance to, probably create a future for themselves that looks more like what they would like it to, or what they're capable of having, versus some far off distant fairy tale that may never happen.
Okay, I'll just give you opportunity both just to make a final point, and I just want to, if I can, centre it around what's the responsibility when you're dealing with children? Is it to educate them or entertain them? First to you, Karen.
I think it's to entertain them, and I miss the kiss. I don't want some clumsy guy tripping over my casket in the woods or dropping me and dislodging an apple. I want the guy to swoop in and kiss me and sweep me off my feet. That's the fantasy. It's a great love story. Let's not change it.
What do you think, Reese? Educate or entertain?
I think we've got a role here to prepare these girls to take over the world. And just like when they walk into the Toys R Us store, instead of giving them baby dolls and Barbies, let them have the opportunity to have astronaut sets and other things that can prepare them to have an incredible future.
Ladies, really enjoyed speaking to you. Great to hear your thoughts. My guests, TV and radio host Karen Turk and women's rights advocate Reese Everson. Thank you so much.